The phone rang just as Daniel Hayes was closing the biggest deal of his career. His office buzzed with celebration, but the number flashing on his screen stopped him cold. Unknown caller. Normally, he'd silence it, let the world wait. But something in his chest whispered, "Answer it." "Hello?" His voice was calm, rehearsed, until he heard the reply. "Are you—" "My dad?" Daniel froze. His pen slipped, hitting the marble floor with a soft click that sounded louder than thunder. Around him, the noise of the office faded. The voice on the line was small, trembling, fragile. "My mom told me to call you. She's in the hospital. The ICU." He swallowed hard. "Who is your mother?" "Maya," the girl whispered. "Please. She needs you." The name hit him like a ghost from a past he had buried deep. Maya. The one woman who had made him feel human before he chose ambition over love. 5 years ago, she'd told him she was pregnant. He told her to move on. He never looked back. Until now. Daniel's heart pounded. He tried to speak, but his throat locked. He remembered her laugh, her kindness, the way she used to say, "One day you'll realize not everything is about control." And now she was in a hospital bed. And a little girl calling him Dad. He stood up abruptly, ignoring the curious looks of his team. His world of contracts and profit suddenly meant nothing. For the first time in years, fear wasn't about losing money. It was about losing what might have been his family. As he rushed out into the storm, one thought echoed louder than the rain. Was this the moment life was giving him a second chance, or demanding that he finally face his past? The rain hit the windshield like shattered glass as Daniel drove through the city. His hands gripped the wheel so tight his knuckles turned white. Every red light felt like punishment. Every street sign whispered too late. He didn't even know if Maya was alive. All he had was a trembling voice on the phone and the echo of a name that once meant everything. When he reached St. Mary's Hospital, the smell of antiseptic and silence greeted him. His heart raced as he approached the front desk. "Maya Carter," he said, his voice breaking. The nurse looked up, her eyes soft. "ICU, room 12. Are you family?" He hesitated before whispering, "I should have been." As he stepped inside, time seemed to stop. Maya lay pale and fragile, machines breathing for her. For a man who had conquered every challenge, this was one he couldn't control. Beside her stood a little girl, clutching a small teddy bear. Her wide eyes looked up at him with something he didn't deserve. "Hope, you're—" "My dad," she said quietly. The word struck deeper than any truth he'd ever faced. Daniel knelt down, his voice shaking. "I think I am." In that moment, the man who built empires felt smaller than ever. The little girl reached out, her tiny hand resting in his. "Mom said you'd come," she whispered. Daniel's chest tightened. He had spent years running from emotion, but here it was, unavoidable, pure, and painfully real. The night outside the hospital window refused to end. Machines hummed softly beside Maya's bed, keeping her alive while Daniel sat in silence, his head in his hands. He had faced investors, rivals, and boardrooms full of sharks, but nothing had ever terrified him like this quiet room. The woman he once loved was fighting for her life, and a child he barely knew was asleep in a chair beside him, clutching that same worn teddy bear. When Lily stirred, she looked at him and whispered, "Mom said you'd come back when she needed you most." The innocence in her voice broke something inside him. He stared at Maya, remembering the last time he'd seen her, the night she told him she was pregnant, standing by the window with tears in her eyes and courage in her voice. He'd chosen pride over love that night, and the memory haunted him now like a ghost that had finally found its way home. A doctor entered quietly, his face solemn. "She's stable for now," he said. "But she'll need surgery soon." Daniel nodded, his throat dry. "Do whatever it takes. I'll cover it." For the first time, money felt meaningless. It couldn't undo his mistakes. As dawn's first light crept through the blinds, Daniel reached for Maya's hand. "If you wake up," he whispered, "I'll never walk away again." And though she couldn't answer, her fingers moved, just slightly, but enough to make his heart believe in second chances. The next morning brought no relief, only more questions and the weight of a truth Daniel could no longer escape. He watched as the doctors prepared Maya for surgery, each second stretching like an eternity. Lily sat beside him in the waiting room, swinging her legs nervously, her eyes fixed on the doors where her mother had disappeared. Daniel had never felt so powerless. For years he had built walls of logic and success, but now all he wanted was for one heartbeat, hers, to keep going. "Did you and Mom ever love each other?" Lily asked suddenly. The question caught him off guard. He turned to face her, unsure what to say. "More than I ever admitted," he whispered. She studied him, her small face serious beyond her age. "Then don't leave her again." Her words pierced him deeper than guilt ever could. Daniel realized that this little girl had inherited more courage than he ever had. Hours later, when the surgeon finally walked out, Daniel stood up so quickly his chair toppled. "She made it," the doctor said with a tired smile. Daniel felt his knees weaken as relief flooded through him. But when he stepped into her room, something new awaited. A small box on the table, labeled in Maya's handwriting. "For Daniel, if I don't wake up." He opened it slowly, and inside lay a photograph of the three of them, him, Maya, and a baby wrapped in a blanket. On the back, in her gentle script, were 6 words that shattered him completely. "You were always part of us." Daniel stared at the photograph for a long time, his fingers trembling as if afraid it might vanish. He didn't remember the picture being taken. Maya must have captured it secretly, a moment when he'd held Lily for the first and only time. His face in the photo was softer, unguarded, a version of himself he no longer recognized. Beneath the photograph was a folded letter, the paper worn but the ink still clear. His heart pounded as he opened it. "Daniel," it began, "I don't hate you. I just hope one day you'll understand that love doesn't make us weak. It teaches us who we are. If you're reading this, it means life went a way neither of us planned. But please, don't let Lily grow up thinking her father was afraid to love." By the time he finished reading, tears blurred his vision. He pressed the letter to his chest, unable to breathe through the guilt and the ache of what he'd lost. Maya had forgiven him long before he'd even tried to change. Later that night, as Lily slept in the chair beside Maya's bed, Daniel sat quietly holding her tiny hand. He realized he couldn't rewrite the past, but he could fight for the future. He leaned close to Maya and whispered, "I was a fool once, but I'm here now, and I'm not leaving again." Outside, the storm that had chased him to the hospital was finally gone. Dawn was breaking, and for the first time in years, Daniel felt something warm stir inside him. Hope. When Maya finally opened her eyes, Daniel thought he was dreaming. For hours he had sat beside her, watching every flicker of the heart monitor, whispering promises she might never hear. But now, those eyes, tired yet full of life, were looking right at him. "You came," she murmured, her voice barely a whisper. Daniel leaned closer, his throat tight. "I should have never left." Tears filled her eyes, not of anger but of quiet understanding. "You were always running," she said softly. "Did you finally stop?" He nodded, his voice breaking. "Yes, because I found what was worth stopping for." Lily stirred beside them, rubbing her eyes before realizing what had happened. "Mom!" she cried, climbing onto the bed, wrapping her small arms around Maya's shoulders. Maya smiled weakly, then looked at Daniel. "She has your stubbornness," she said, her tone faintly teasing. For the first time in years, Daniel laughed, a real, unguarded laugh that carried more emotion than any success he'd ever known. Days later, as Maya recovered, Daniel spent every moment by their side. The world outside still called him, the meetings, the empire, the reputation. But he didn't care. He had built an empire of numbers. Now he was rebuilding one of love. One evening, as the sun painted the hospital walls gold, Maya whispered, "You can't undo the past, Daniel." He smiled gently. "I know, but I can spend the rest of my life making sure our future is different." For the first time, he wasn't chasing power or perfection. He was chasing peace. And this time, he didn't have to chase it alone.